Chapter 34 of The Seventh Most Important Thing by Shelley Pearsall. Arthur waited another couple of days to tell Squeak what had happened with Mr. Hampton over the weekend. He wasn't sure he trusted himself to talk about it without losing his cool. But the scene with Officer Billy in the restaurant kept bothering him. He felt guilty for what he'd said. Mr. Hampton was dying of cancer, and he'd acted like a complete jerk. He didn't know how to undo what he'd done. He kept picturing the garage full of gold and silver furniture that was supposed to be heaven, and all of those shimmering wings. "If I tell you something that's bugging me, can you keep your mouth shut about it?" he asked Squeak while they were finishing lunch on Wednesday. "What?" Squeak glanced up from his book, looking lost. He was studying for a big algebra test that afternoon. Arthur sighed, already beginning to regret his decision. "Just listen to me for a minute, okay?" "Sure, yes." Squeak closed his textbook reluctantly. Taking a deep breath, Arthur told Squeak the whole crazy story. How he'd found Mr. Hampton crumpled on the floor of the garage, and how he'd gone to the hospital with him, how they'd talked for the first time, and how he'd finally learned what the guy was doing. "So, what is it?" Squeak asked. "Heaven," Arthur said. "He's building a sculpture of heaven." "What?" Squeak's mouth dropped open. "Heaven?" Without stopping to explain, Arthur pushed on with the rest of his story, telling Squeak what he'd learned from Officer Billy, how Mr. Hampton had cancer, and how it was possible he might be dying. When Arthur finished talking, Squeak's eyes were wide and unblinking behind his glasses. "Gosh, that's a lot to happen all at once," he said. Arthur paused and swallowed, trying to keep his voice steady. "The thing is, he asked me to keep working on the project while he's in the hospital. He gave me the keys to his garage, but I don't think I can do it." "Why not?" Arthur picked up one of the foil squares from the table and crumpled it in his hands. He didn't like talking about his feelings, especially not about his dad. "Because I can't deal with it again, not after my dad's death and all that stuff," he said finally. "I don't care who it is. I don't want to deal with it." He kept on crumpling more and more foil without saying anything else. When he finished, he had a small pile of foil gumballs in front of him. After a long silence, Squeak said, "Well, do you want my opinion?" "I guess." "I don't think you can give up on Mr. Hampton." "Why not?" Arthur snapped, sounding more irritated than he meant to. Squeak took off his glasses and wiped them carefully on his shirt. "Well, it's your probation sentence, that's one reason. Officer Billy said they'd find something else for me to do." "It might be worse." "Than working for a dying person?" "Who knows?" Squeak shrugged. "You don't know for sure what's going to happen. Maybe the project will somehow save him. The mind is a powerful thing. Maybe building heaven, working on this masterpiece, is what's keeping him alive." "That's crazy," Arthur replied, although he couldn't help remembering what Mr. Hampton had said in the hospital about the brick saving him. "And now you've made me feel guilty," he added. If I don't help him, he might die." "I could come along with you this Saturday and help out if you want," Squeak offered. "Except for my violin lesson, I don't have anything else to do." Arthur stared incredulously at Squeak. "You take violin lessons?" "They only last an hour." Squeak looked embarrassed. "I'd like to see the project. Maybe if I saw it, I could give you some ideas about what to do next." "I don't need any help," Arthur insisted, annoyed with himself for sharing too much with Squeak. There was no way someone whose biggest worry was his violin lessons could possibly understand all the things he had to deal with in his life. Squeak stood up and slid one knee onto the tabletop. "If you don't let me come this Saturday, I'll stand up here again. I swear I will." Arthur grabbed Squeak's elbow, accidentally knocking his pile of books on the floor. "Don't be an idiot." Squeak's eyes were fierce behind his glasses. "Then let me come along." "Fine," Arthur sighed. "Okay." He was tired of fighting with everyone.